forget to do that? Yeah, I did that last time. I recorded like 30 minutes and never pushed the right button. Okay. So here's the thing. Odysseus is inside the hut. He hears this happening outside, and he's like, hey, somebody's out there that you know, a friend or something, because the dogs are not making any noise. And then he says, I can hear footsteps, and there's a long dash. There's an M dash, which means that he is interrupted mid-sentence, and it also signifies almost like a gasp. So I can hear footsteps, but before he finished, his tall son stood at the door. The swineherd rose in surprise, letting a bowl and jug tumble from his fingers. Going forward, he kissed the young man's head, his shining eyes in both hands, while his own tears brimmed and fell. And now what we have is an epic simile, not for the reunion of the father and the son. We have an epic simile for a reunion between the swineherd and Telemachus, but it's going to be about a father and a son. Odysseus doesn't even get his first epic simile with his son. It says this, think of a man whose dear and only son, born to him in exile, reared with labor, has lived 10 years abroad, and now returns. How would that man embrace his son? Just so the herdsman clapped his arms around Telemachus and covered him with kisses, for he knew the lad had gone away from death. So here's this sorrowful moment right here, where that's the epic simile used, and Odysseus just has to be this beggar in disguise. He said, light of my day. Yeah, go ahead.
Why does the swineherd care about Telemachus?
Well, because you're going to see in a minute. He said, light of my days, Telemachus, you made it back. When you took ship for Pylos, I never thought to see you here again. Come in, dear child, and let me feast my eyes. Here you are, home from the distant places. How rarely anyway you visit us, your own men and your own woods and pastures. Look at this, your own men, your own woods and pastures, always in the town. A man would think you loved the suitor's company, those dogs. Telemachus with his clear candor said, I am with you, uncle. I want to pause there for a minute. The word uncle in the Greek is the word ata, which means papa. So basically, Eumaeus has raised Telemachus in Odysseus' absence.
Wait, has he really? Like they actually really do know each other?
It says, I am with you, ata, papa. They translate it, Fitzgerald translates it uncle. But what we know is that he comes there so often that the dogs have no trouble. Okay? They're like fawning all over him, right?
Because like
Okay,
the way,
so-
sorry.
Go ahead.
So like the way that he said, like, oh, you never come here. I thought, and like
You haven't
the way
come
he
here
was
in a
boy-
while, yeah.
Okay,
Because
and the
if
way he was a boy who didn't really attend or like realize what was going on in his
Well,
kingdom, I didn't realize that he had any relationships with other people other than just like at the palace or like being around the suitors and everything. So
well,
I
you have the
realized-
epic simile to give that away.
Yeah.
So here's he's standing up, he's weeping, and the epic simile they get is that of a father whose son has been in exile. He knew that he had left for Pylos. He didn't know if he was going to make it back alive.
It's awkward for
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
And it kind of makes sense because Eumaeus seems to very much love Odysseus and adore him, even though.
Yeah, and if you look at, in book 14, he was raised with that. He was raised with Odysseus' sister. They treated him like one of the family, and then they gave him the job of the swineherd, and they gave him his hut, and they gave him his place in the forest, which is where he wanted to go. So he's grown up in this household, and that's the most natural place that Telemachus would have gone. It's probably the only man who's had any influence. I am with you. Ata is the word in Greek. See, now I have come because I wanted to see you first to hear from you if mother stayed at home. Or is she married off to someone and Odysseus' bed left empty for some gloomy spiders weaving? Notice he doesn't even say my father's bed. He says Odysseus' bed. So now he's talking about Odysseus in third person in front of his father. Gently the forester replied to this, at home indeed your mother is, poor lady, still in the women's hall. Her nights and days are wearied out with grieving. Stepping back, he took the bronze-shod lance, and the young prince entered the cabin over the worn doorstone. Now Odysseus does something that a beggar is supposed to do. When someone of principle actually walks in through the door, the person who is lower on that socioeconomic level is supposed to make way for the person of importance, okay? So Odysseus, as the beggar, steps away from the couch, and he has no idea if Telemachus is going to treat him badly, how he's going to respond. He's been around all of these suitors. Eumaeus has just made a joke saying, oh, I thought you loved the suitors. So he doesn't know what's going to happen. Odysseus moved aside, yielding his couch. But from across the room, Telemachus checked in. Friend, Xenos, stranger, foreigner. That's what he's calling it. Sit down, we'll find another chair in our own hut. Here's the man to make one. So he's like, hey, you don't have to move, stay where you are. So first of all, the one thing you notice is that Telemachus is kind and generous to old beggar men, right? The next thing he says is our own hut. So obviously he spent a lot of time here. Here's the man to make one. The swineherd, when the quiet man sank down, built a new pile of evergreens and fleeces, a couch for the dear son of great Odysseus, then gave them trenchers of good meat left over from the roast pork of yesterday, and heaped up willow baskets full of bread, and mixed an ivy bowl of honey-hearted wine. Then he in turn sat down facing Odysseus. Their hands went out upon the meat and drink as they fell to, ridding themselves of hunger, until Telemachus paused and said, oh, uncle, papa, what's your friend's home port, Xenos? What's your stranger's home port? How did he come? Who were the sailors brought him here to Ithaca? I doubt if he came walking on the sea. And you replied, Eumaeus, O my swineherd, son, the truth about him is soon told. And then he tells the lie, the little bit of the lie that Odysseus has told. But Telemachus says that he wants to help this beggar. He does not want Eumaeus to have to spend any of his own money. I don't want to see you pinched, that's what he says. But he doesn't want the beggar to come up to his hall because he's so embarrassed by the suitors and the way the suitors would treat him. So he says, I will send you food and drink and clothing and anything that you need so that you don't have to take anything out of your own goods to take care of this man. So then on page 292, Telemachus says the suitors are too strong and they're going to treat him too badly. Odysseus says, right in the middle, King, or kind prince, it may be fitting for me to speak a word. All that you say gives me an inward wound as I sit listening. I mean this wanton game they play, these fellows riding roughshod over you in your own house, admirable as you are. But tell me, are you resigned to being bled? Like, do you actually like this? Because again, Odysseus has to figure out, what's Telemachus' role in all this? Can I trust him? The townsmen stirred up against you, are they by some oracle? Your brothers, can you say your brothers fail you? Now what else is Odysseus asking here? He's saying, do you have any brothers?
Oh, didn't Penelope remarry?
Yes. Are there any other sons around?
Oh, because he knows nothing.
So he doesn't know anything. And so Telemachus says, no, we are all single men that have been born into the house. So Laertes was the only boy, and then Odysseus was an only boy. He had a sister, and then Telemachus is an only boy, but he has no other sibling. And he's like, there's so many suitors, there's nothing I can do. I'm stuck, and my mother has to remarry, and she doesn't want to. It's desperate, it's dire, and basically he says, there's no hope. We have no hope.
Wait, so they still don't know Odysseus is back?
No one knows. So Odysseus is in that beggar costume, and he is, and that's his emotional trial that he has to bear. He can't let anybody know. So in hearing, here's the other thing. If you think about this, the one thing that a father wants to hear from their child, the one word they want to hear, the very first one is Papa, right? So here's Odysseus sitting here. Thank you. Here's Odysseus sitting here. And the very first words out of Telemachus' mouth are the words Papa, and he's not saying them to him, he's saying them to the swineherd. So he doesn't even get that, and yet he has to keep himself as if he has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this, just these beautiful moments. Okay, So what happens here is they talk a little bit. Eumaeus has to leave, and he ties on his shoes and exits the hut. And as he does this, Odysseus looks out the door, and through the gate he sees Athena, bless you. And somehow it says Athena makes a sign with her brows that Odysseus knows about. So I don't know what kind of brow sign that is. But anyway, makes a sign with her brows, and he goes out there, bottom of 294, and she says, son of Laertes and the gods of old, Odysseus, master of landways and seaways, dissemble to your son no longer now. The time has come. Tell him how you together will bring doom on the suitors in the town. I shall not be far distant then, for I myself desire battle. Saying no more, she tipped her golden wand upon the man. Okay, so the fairy godmother has nothing on her. That's where we get that idea of the gold wand, is from Athena in ancient Greek literature. Making his cloak pure white and the knit tunic fresh around him. Lithe and young she made him, ruddy with sun, his jawline clean. The beard no longer grew upon his chin, and she withdrew when she had done. So he had stepped out of the hut. Now Lord Odysseus is coming back in the hut. Then Lord Odysseus reappeared, and his son was thunderstruck. Fear in his eyes, he looked down and away as though it were a god, and whispered, stranger, you are no longer what you were just now. Your cloak is new, even your skin. You are one of the gods who rule the sweep of heaven. Be kind to us. We'll make you fair oblation and gifts of hammered gold. Have mercy on us. He thinks he's seeing a god. Plus, he doesn't know what his father looks like. He's never seen him. The noble and enduring man replied, listen to this. No, God. Why take me for a god? No, no. I am that father whom your boyhood lacked and suffered pain for lack of. We have never seen Odysseus stumble over his words, and this is kind of a convoluted sentence here. I am that father whom your boyhood lacked and suffered pain for lack of. We can see right here, just in the construct of the word and the words in the syntax, that Odysseus is a little bit beside himself, and he's stumbling over his words, and then finally he just says, I am he. Here's this man, a great man of rhetoric, and he's just stumbling over his words. Held back too long, the tears ran down Odysseus' cheeks as he embraced his son. Well, he goes to embrace us, but Telemachus, uncomprehending, wild with incredulity, cried out, you cannot be my father, Odysseus. Meddling spirits conceived this trick to twist the knife in me. No man of woman born could work these wonders by his own craft unless a god came into it with ease to turn him young or old at will. I swear you in rags and old, and here you stand like one of the immortals. Odysseus brought his ranging mind to bear. He's like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And he said, what does he do? He decides to act like a father and to speak to him like a son. And he says, this is not princely, to be swept away by wonder at your father's presence. So now he's being a dad. No other Odysseus will ever come, for he and I are one, the same. His bitter fortune and his wanderings are mine. 20 years gone, and I am back again on my own island. As for my change of skin, that is a charm Athena, hope of soldiers, uses as she will. She has the knack to make me seem a beggar man sometimes, and sometimes young, with finer clothes about me. It is no hard thing for the gods of heaven to glorify a man or bring him low. When he had spoken, down he sat. Then throwing his arms around this marvel of a father, Telemachus began to weep. Salt tears rose from the wells of longing in both men, and cries burst forth from both as keen and fluttering as those of the great taloned hawk, whose nestlings farmers take before they fly. So helplessly they cried, pouring out tears. I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to explain this simile to you and why it's absolutely so breathtaking and so sad. So they're weeping. And it talks about their weeping as coming from wells, like deep wells, just coming up through their eyes. That's how much they're crying. But the cries that they are expressing are compared to these mother hawks. So back in the day, farmers needed to deal, they didn't have pesticide, and so they needed to deal with all of their rodents and the birds that came in their orchards and whatever. So what they would do is they would train hawks, and then they would release them into the gardens and the orchards, and then they would chase all the rodents away, and that was the natural way of taking care of your gardens and your orchards. The way that they would get their hawks is that they would keep an eye on